2024 was a big year for stuff that I never thought that I would see. One of those things was a remake of a game from 2004, and that game was Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Wait, that's not out? They said 2024. What happened? They just forgot? Great company you got there. Well, there's also the Thousand Year Door remake. For a while, it really was starting to look like Nintendo had some kind of vendetta against the old Paper Marios, you know what I mean? There were a lot of really cool things about them that I took for granted at the time, from the bizarro characters to the stories and writing that had actual effort put into them. These were things where I didn't recognize just how special they were until they weren't there anymore. But with the excellent remake of Thousand Year Door, Super Mario RPG, and the hip new old school Mario and Luigi game that came out last month, it could be a sign that we finally have a chance to recapture that essence once again. I mean, it's either that or it's some kind of bizarre apocalyptic omen in disguise, but whatever Nintendo and Intelligent Systems do is ultimately beyond our control. But one thing that we do have control over is ROM hacks. Well, for now. Paper Mario has had a hugely dedicated fan base, and with new advancements being made more frequently now than ever, the possibilities are far more open, and I hope that today's game will really set the tone for TTYD mods in the future. It's called Tower of Trials, and it is one of the best things I have played in years. This is one of those dangerously addictive games that puts the entire marathon in jeopardy by occupying way too much of my time. I heard about this ROM hack the way I imagine a lot of people did, which is through Kaza's F3 event this year, which I know I've said this before, but I want to thank everyone involved in F3. It makes these marathons a lot easier. Even though there have been TTYD hacks before this one, this is the first one that I've actually played, and it met and exceeded my expectations easily. Tower of Trials takes Paper Mario TTYD and turns it into a roguelike marathon of back-to-back fights. Hooktail's Castle has been modified to being a series of towers where you start at level 1 with no partners and barely any moves, and after every single fight, you pick up scraps and one upgrade or bonus of some description. There's a huge degree of randomness and unpredictability that adds a thrilling element to the game, even for people who call themselves experts of the original. If any of this sounds familiar, it should. The concept is very similar to the earlier Paper Mario The Black Pit. This is a ROM hack of the original game for the Nintendo 64 from a couple years ago, and is also a personal favorite of mine. I played that game for several days and ended up with over 20 hours of footage, which is a mistake that I repeated with this game, except it was even worse this time because I played it for as many as 36 hours. Funnily enough, they actually directly reference Black Pit in this game. That kid who played Fire Emblem in the original has now moved on to ROM hacks. That's a pipeline that should be studied. Look, now he's playing Kirby's Air Ride for the GameCube. He says they should make a sequel. Oh, to be young again, and to believe that good games will get sequels and won't just be left in the fucking dumpster like the month-old Cheeto that I found under my subwoofer. Poor kid. Why couldn't God make him a fan of Call of Duty or something? There are a lot of peculiar alterations to the gameplay which fundamentally changes the experience to a dramatic extent. One interesting thing is that every time you start a battle, your star power is reset to 0 and you have to build it up every single time. It doesn't carry over between fights, so you have to use it up before the battle ends or you'll never see it again. It makes for a more aggressive game where you really want to let loose with the fucko moves because to not do so is tactically stupid. And it also discourages the hit and run tactic of entering a battle and farming some star power and then bitching out and doing that over and over again until you're full up. Every partner also has a bunch of completely new moves with new action commands and tweaks. This is nuts, and it's one of the things I never thought they'd actually be able to do. They are outlandish too. Bobbery has this giant bomb move that nukes the entire map, doing huge damage to everyone, including yourself. The moral of the story is nobody wins in a nuclear war. On top of all this, most of your moves and your partner's moves can be upgraded to 3 levels, and all of this is tracked inside this super nifty new journal. I can definitely appreciate that. I played a lot of games that expect you to keep track of these kinds of things in your head, and I'm glad this isn't one of them. One thing I'd like them to add here is the ability to test out new moves in a no-stakes environment. Thing is, by the time you unlock these moves, you're usually ass deep into the run, at which point half the enemies will be one-shotting you, which makes it riskier to experiment with a completely new and unknown move. I've played the original game so many times at this point that whenever I start a new playthrough, I'm essentially playing the game on autopilot, the same way I play something like Banjo-Kazooie. The most exciting thing about this game, even as someone who's played the original as much as I have, is that I rarely ever knew the outcome of a battle to a certainty. And that's where the true excitement begins. Not since the very first time I ever played the original did it occur to me to be intimidated by it. Every single enemy has some kind of badge or item that'll ruin your whole day, and every other floor has a giant jacked up version of an enemy with 3 billion extra health and damage. The same enemy will have different stats depending on how far you are in the run. It kept me on my toes from start to finish. Because all of this stuff has been changed and so much has been added and tweaked, it engaged me on a level that the original no longer does. Because that's what happens when you beat the same video game 15 times. The game also offers a ton of customization for your runs, even to the granular seed level. I can see this being a big deal for a lot of people. And if none of that sold you yet, get this. The game's got achievements. Yeah, I'm serious. Some of these achievements actually help you out in the game, giving you permanent upgrades like the ability to see an enemy's health without tattling or having the timing tutor badge telling you when to do the stylish moves. Some of these achievements have absolutely bonkers requirements, but I guess they wouldn't be achievements if they were easy. You gotta remember, I got the Platinum Trophy in Metal Gear Solid 4, so you know I know what I'm talking about. That shit requires you to beat the game a minimum of 9 times, one of which has to be a big boss playthrough. Don't ever do it. You can also unlock all kinds of cosmetics like costumes for Mario, attack sound badges, and even your choice of Yoshi colors. It's not just carried over from the original game either, there are all kinds of new ones like the retro sound effects. Dude, that's so totally retro. Remember 1-1? Remember Green Hill Zone? Remember that one area in Chrono Trigger with the waterfall and the graphics and the sprite work? And wow, old games really were better, weren't they? One thing I think would be nice, which as far as I could tell wasn't a feature, would be the ability to change the music at any point. The entire game takes place in an alternate version of Hooktail's castle, so essentially you will be hearing the same 2 songs for 95% of the game, and it's gonna wear itself out fast. But at least you can turn the music on and off, so if you get tired of it, you can just switch it off and put on some other music while you play, and problem solved. Well, kinda. Really though, it's a minor gripe. If it was that big of a problem, I wouldn't have spent more than 35 hours playing this game. The long and short of it is this. Play Tower of Trials. It's incredible, it's unpredictable, and extremely replayable. And all of this is true even if you're completely burnt out on the original. I still haven't even found everything after all the time I spent, and that's saying something. It's definitely fun, but it's not quite as funny as tomorrow's topic, except perhaps in a cosmic sort of way. But until then, Merry Christmas, cousins!